chatting about the magical moments of fantasy books and clink glasses with characters we wish were real. I almost said our old one.
I was just gonna say, our old one just had such a flow to it, and every time you do the new one, I'm waiting to jump in and be like, yeah, and then you keep going, and I'm like, oh no, we have our new one, we have our new one. But
I have to remind myself, okay, we got a new one. It's amazing,
yes,
but
it is.
We do. But yeah,
deep breaths.
So magical moments here. Today we are talking about part 2 of One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. We are finally talking about it. So thank you for our listeners who have been so patient with us. We have had a hurricane, lots of job changes for both of us.
Lots of job changes.
So we appreciate your patience.
Technology issues.
Yes. Yeah, so thank you for our listeners for being so patient. We are so excited to talk about part 2. Keep an eye on our schedule on TikTok and Instagram for updated episode releases. So we're excited to keep talking about One Dark Window. We didn't go away. We're still here.
We're still here.
Life happens. You guys get it.
Life happens. But as we talked about last week, or I guess at this point last month, we've adjusted how we go through our books now. So we're still doing quotables. We changed it up a little bit. And then we go into our Tomes and Tonics where we meet our characters and share drinks. We still have magical moments. And then Keri has some questions for me at the end. So I have not read this book yet. I just finished reading part 2. Keri has read this book and Two Twisted Crowns, which is the sequel to this. So changing things up a little bit. But now we're going to go on to our quotables. And remember, how did we leave off part 1, Keri?
That is a great question.
Okay, we left part 1 off.
Well, okay, I was going to explain. I listened to, I've been listening to the audiobook on our reread here. Or my reread, sorry. And I kept listening past part 1. So I thought, and I said this in part 1's episode, we were leaving off with, or we ended part 1 with them in the carriage ride. That's actually happening in part 2.
Yes.
So that's why I hesitated, because I was like, I don't remember.
So we left off, Elspeth has joined this band of misfits. And Raven and her are courting to excuse her staying at Castle U. They have not gone to Castle U yet. At least at the end of part 1. That's where we begin part 2. So we start off, they're in the carriage ride. They're going back to Castle U with Raven, Elspeth, Jesper. Is she in the carriage ride? And then the parents, which I can never remember their names.
Yeah, no.
Mama and Daddy. Mom and Dad U.
Yeah.
We're not that calling Daddy U.
Oh no.
Father U. Father U.
I don't know if that's better. It sounds like Father Pew. I don't know. But that carriage ride, can we talk about that? How awkward that must have been?
Yeah.
Elspeth is pissed with Raven for hiding secrets.
Yep.
And she is
Which, do you think she's valid for being pissed?
Not really. She's holding, a huge secret.
Yeah, exactly.
She needs to chill. I was mad at her. I was like, why are you mad at Raven? Bro.
You agreed to this?
Literally. You've known him for 2 seconds. Relax.
You didn't tell him all your secrets?
About that big one in your head. Yeah, that carriage ride just makes me think of, if the Bennett sisters from Pride and Prejudice were all mad at each other. And it would just be, so quiet.
Yeah.
Just completely quiet. That's what I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we had so they got to Castle U. And their first mission, obviously, if you remember from part 1, their goal is to collect all the Providence cards to get rid of the infection, get rid of the mist.
Yes.
All of that. So they know that this lady Sylvia and her daughters, or Sylvia's husband, has the Iron Gate card. Or
well, they
so they
suspect.
Believe. Yes. which we are confirmed of when they have tea.
Yes.
Which, much to Jesper and Elspeth's
chagrin.
Yes, that's a great word. They were not happy about doing this.
No, they were not.
Do you have any thoughts about that whole thing? Like their tea party?
Not really.
I was like, when I first read this, I was like, is this going to be one of those like books where we're just like slowly doing like side quests to get to like the cards? Like I thought it was going to be that type of book.
Mm-hmm.
And then we continued. We had the whole highwayman scene later on. But at first I was like, no, I don't want to do this like, oh, we have all these little missions to get each card, which they kind of do, but I didn't want it to be like this where they have to like talk to people to get the card or figure out where the card is. So glad Rachel didn't go that way. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Rachel Gillig.
Thank you. Love that. Yeah. So we're in Castle U. You had a note about Orith Willow?
Oh, I thought that was your note.
I don't think so. Was it mine?
Okay. I thought it was.
So, listeners, we did this outline like 2 weeks ago.
No. We did this outline like a month ago.
Well, we're struggling. If we're wrong in anything, just yell at us. Or give us grace, actually, because it's been a month.
It has been a month, yes.
So we're here.
Yeah. It has been literally a month since I did this outline, so.
Yes.
But anyways, okay. Orith Willow, we find out that he is the physician, and he is the big scary guy who has this iron claw type thing on his hand.
Scary.
That
Edward Scissorhands, who?
Exactly. And can basically, like, tell if somebody's infected or not by, like, cutting them open, which, like...
Yeah, through
terrifying.
Their blood. Which, think of all the people he's done that to.
Right?
Like, that's
And there's
horrible.
nobody... Like, there's no checks and balances. So, like, if he doesn't like somebody, they're out.
You're getting tested. It's like a blood drawing gone wrong. Like,
yep.
Imagine getting your blood drawn with the, like, claw. That would be painful.
Very painful.
No. But do you remember anything particular that we learned about Orith? I'm trying not to spoil something in case.
That he's infected?
Yes, but never mind. This is why we can't wait this long. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to Orith if we need.
Okay.
But I have a quote here from when we're at Castle U. So Elspeth is... Obviously, we're in her POV here. She says, the more I asked for his help, meaning the nightmare, the more potent the nightmare's presence became. But I did not fully know his mind. There were still secrets between us. So, what secrets do you think the nightmare holds?
Well, we already kind of find out in this part what secrets he holds. Like, he's this shepherd king, which I would just like to say I was right.
You were right. I am very proud of you.
Thank you.
When did you pick it up that he was the shepherd king? Like, what particular part? Because I think we just talked about how that was your theory last episode.
Yeah, it was... I'm trying to think. So, like, it was the fact that he could quote the book. What is it? The Book of the Elders. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like, every time he talked about himself, it was in riddles, but that wasn't always the case for other people. We talked about why I thought that in the last episode, I think.
That's right. Yeah. It's just, I picked it up in her dream when he was, like, in the library or whatever, and he's very cat-like, and his eyes were yellow. I don't know, I just had to, like, oh my gosh. I'd have to look it up. Now I'm gonna have to look it up real quick, because there was a quote, and I think I did it in our part 1 episode, actually.
Yeah, you asked, like, did I think the dreams were going to be a bigger part of this in the part 1, and I hadn't even really thought about it, so I don't think it was the dream that, like, made me think that.
Yes. So that's when I thought it was because there's something, I don't have the quote. I didn't write it down, but it was like something he was like he mentions the king in some aspect, Shepherd King, or hints at it, and I was like, I think he's the Shepherd King. So the dream for me was where I was like, is he? And then I was reading this on a plane, and when I read this part, when he says he's the Shepherd King, I was like, yes! It's just like, I want to jump up and down, but I'm in the middle seat and can't move, but it's okay.
You read a lot in middle seats of planes.
I do. I love reading on planes because then I can't be distracted by anything else.
Yeah. I just feel like you end up in the middle seat a lot.
Yeah, next time, long plane rides, never again.
I feel I end up in the middle seat because Liam likes the window seat, and I don't mind the windows or the middle seat if like he's next to me, but like if I'm alone, I want the aisle. I do not want the window.
Oh, wow. I would rather the window so I could scoot as far as I can away from sticky, smelly people.
But you can do that in the aisle too.
Yeah, but then I feel like I'm in the flight attendant's way and like I can't really stretch out.
Yeah, but they're not there all the time.
No. I don't know. Maybe I just always end up near the bathroom too.
Oh.
I don't know.
That would do it.
Yeah. I try to take the middle seat for Jesse, but if there's like a guy, sometimes depending on the guy, he'll like sit in the middle for me if he doesn't like the look of him. Yeah. And that's not being rude to anyone. It's just he's being a good husband, protecting his wife. So we love that. Although I feel bad for him because he's always squished and I'm like, I could sit there. It's okay. If I'm uncomfortable, we can switch. But any other secrets you think the nightmare actually holds? AKA the Shepherd King.
Keri, I have not read this book in a month.
Yes, that is true. So we'll have you sit on that for part 3.
I don't even remember everything that about Orth Willow. So.
That's okay. You did great. I get their names confused because of all the trees. So usually I'm good with like last names in books, but this one they're all trees. So I get confused very easily because you have you, Willow, Spindle. I'm like, oh my gosh. They're all the same. But yeah.
So after the tea, Elspeth goes out into the garden of Castle U. Mm-hmm. And she starts making a flower crown. And she's going out there because she like doesn't want to be around anybody. And relatable. Literally. And Raven comes looking for her. It's not like he's out walking and like just happens to stroll by. No, he's like looking for her. Mm-hmm. And that was significant because I was like, oh, like that he's going to be an intentional character very, very specifically, which I really liked. And I also have a note that says, quote, pretend. And I remember kind of what this means because they talk about pretending and then they make like some kind of deal, but then I don't remember why that was such a big deal other than we talked about pretending in Reckless like every single chapter.
Yes.
So that's probably where that came from.
Yeah. When I read this, I think I don't know if we were reading Reckless at the time or Powerless.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But I remember, like, when I was rereading this, I was like, I don't know about this trope. So what are your thoughts about the pretend trope now that we've seen it in 2 books that we've done on this podcast?
Okay, so I think they are 2 very different tropes. Okay. So, like, Reckless is a continuation.
I just did spoilers.
Oh.
Spoilers if you ever read Reckless or Powerless.
Yeah, Reckless is a continuation of the relationship we see in Powerless versus this is a fake dating trope. Mm-hmm. And they're 2 very different things. You don't like fake dating.
But I liked this one for some reason. I think because it's forced proximity as well.
Okay.
So I
can get behind that.
So I was thinking about this because I knew you were going to bring it up. But I like forced proximity more than I like fake dating,
Okay.
but I like them together.
Okay.
So, like, what's that? There's a movie. I don't know. There's a movie where they're like they hate each other, so it's like enemies to lovers, but they're also like having to fake date for like an event. And then they're also like, I don't know what movie it is.
Oh, is it with Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney?
Maybe.
So there's that one. That's a funny one.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh,
Glenn
okay.
Powell is like the cowboy one, the Twisters guy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen it.
That's funny. That, honestly, though, Keri, that's a very common movie trope, so...
That's probably why I like it, but, yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
So I think that's why, because we've talked a lot, like with our episode with Marissa, and I believe with our Bookish and Bubbly, we've talked about fake
Hope and Brooke,
dating.
we love you!
We love you, Hope and Brooke! Always love to shout out them. Which, if you're looking for a funny episode to just make you laugh, I forget what the name of it.
Hotties. It's like the Hotties who... Hold on, we gotta look this up.
Yes.
I was crying. And listeners...
Crying.
They have a YouTube video with their slideshow. You have to watch the YouTube video. They say it like 10 times, like in the episode. You have to watch the YouTube video. If you're going to listen to this episode, we have to tag it in the show notes.
Yes.
Make a note of that, Keri. We have to tag it because it's hilarious. Hold on. Hotties who have our hearts. That's the episode name. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. I died. I listened to it in 2 parts because I wanted to watch it, obviously. And the censored one and Brooke's reaction to Hope's censored one. I literally had tears. We're turning this into a Bookish and Bubbly love podcast, and I'm here for it.
Yes. Anyways.
Yes.
Back
okay.
to
I don't
pretending.
know where we're going with that. Oh yeah, pretending.
Fake dating.
Fake dating. Yeah, I don't mind this trope in this book because I think it's also because it's not like the main storyline. It's just like a side.
Yes.
Like I think the romance here is very side story.
Interesting.
Would you agree?
Okay.
Do you disagree?
I would not call this a romantasy.
Yeah.
I would call this a romantic fantasy.
I have a video saved on my TikTok to watch about the difference because I don't fully understand.
Okay, so a romantic, and this maybe is incorrect, but this is how I think about it. So this is a fantasy book that is romantic, right? One of the main plot points is the romance, but it's not the only plot point, which is a romantic fantasy. The fantasy is the baseline of it, and then there's the romantic parts, versus romantasy is a romance that has fantasy elements.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, I'm trying to think, like, Powerless is a romantasy. Because
the romance.
The romance is the plot. Versus, okay, here's a really good example. So, like the Hunger Games, like, say the first book, right? The Hunger Games is a dystopian novel, but I would argue that The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is a romantic dystopian.
Interesting.
Versus, like, I would maybe argue that Catching Fire is a dystopian romance. Because that's really when Peeta and Katniss really, start having their romance.
Did you see? We have been so busy, we haven't had time to, like, even talk. So
We're probably
listeners,
gonna cut a lot of this out.
That's okay. Well, listeners can enjoy our actual conversations too.
Yes, that's true.
book cover for the new story was released.
Real bad reviews.
What?
People did not like it.
The cover?
The cover.
I didn't feel any sort of hate. I was just excited.
Oh, we should
just
post that.
Yes, I'm so excited for the next book. I'm ready to enter my Hunger Games era again.
It comes out in March, yes?
I think so. March or May.
We have a ton of books coming out early 2025.
I can't wait.
I
need to get moved and settled before Iron Flame or Onyx Storm comes out. That's my goal.
Onyx Storm. January. I don't know if we have anything in February. March, we have Haymitch's story. I don't even remember what it's called.
No idea. I'm just excited.
So, new Hunger Games.
New Hunger Games book.
April, we have Fearless.
Fearless!
In the Reckless trilogy.
I can't wait. I'm
so excited.
I'm almost as excited about that as Onyx Storm. Don't yell me. Okay, good.
That's April.
I don't know anything else.
Oh, The Will of the Many book 2 is supposed to come out early 2025.
That's right. I still need to read that.
You do.
And currently,
that might be a fun one for the podcast. It's kind of like a gothic Roman fantasy.
Okay.
Maybe. We'll see. Yeah. Anyways, back to the book.
Back to One Dark Window. That's okay.
Okay, so we're in the garden still.
Mm-hmm.
We learn about the mist. So, important. This is very important, ladies and gentlemen.
Download.
The mist, because, I almost called her Peyton, because Elspeth is infected. The mist does not affect infected people. So, she has her little,
The charm.
She doesn't need it. But other people do who are not infected, which we see later in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But that's very important because that, I don't know, that was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of, foundational things about the magic, so...
Yes, definitely.
I'm excited for your magical moments.
And then we learn about the old ruins. Keri, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so I have a quote here.
Okay.
I'm so excited that I actually had quotes this time. But the quote is, "How strange it looked, alone in the ruins, unmarked but for one dark window, situated on its southernmost wall." I love a good nod to the title.
Same.
Anytime... one of my favorite podcasts is Pod and Prejudice. Go check them out. But they anytime something's in the title, they'll be like, "It's in the title." So that's just what goes on in my head. But I literally love a good nod to the title. I don't know why. I'm just like, oh, that's why it's called that. I get really excited. So with that, what were your kind of thoughts when we came to the ruins? The blood and the seeing this and the nightmare's reaction to it. What were your thoughts?
So this was actually, this was my 100% confirmation he's the Shepherd King.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had guessed it before, and we talked about it in part 1, but, this was oh, yeah, he's the Shepherd King. There's no doubt in my mind. And I loved that, I loved the nod to the title. But it makes me wonder, the stone where they keep the cards, I feel like that's gonna have, the fact that the nightmare now knows that's where they are, I feel like is gonna come back into the story later. Because, yeah, I don't know. I also feel like I was almost expecting there to be more magic in the air around there, since that was a meeting spot for the Shepherd King and the Spirit of the Wood. I was really expecting to get some kind of encounter, and we didn't. So I'm wondering if that's gonna happen later. I'm sure that specific room is gonna be very important moving forward, especially since it's the namesake. But
it's in the title.
Yeah. But I don't know, it's very interesting. It also confirms, I think at the end of part 2, we get we learn from Emery that he thinks that the Shepherd King was a you.
Mm.
So it makes sense that the ruins is on you property if that was the case. So I don't know.
Yeah.
There was just a lot going on.
There was. I think for me, the ruins were obviously, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a pretty important place. Like, this is like you said, heavy with magic, and I don't know. I was like, I definitely, this is where I was like, oh, for sure, he's Shepherd King. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. And then, obviously, I was like, okay, why are the ruins so important to the Shepherd King and the Nightmare? So, it'll be interesting to see if we get that information.
Yeah, it will.
Hmm?
I'll know when I know.
You'll know when you know. My secrets are mine to keep,
Isn't there more to that?
There is. I just don't remember the rest. That's all I got.
That's funny.
Yeah. So we learned about the effects of the cards.
Yes. So Elspeth is asking Raven about the effects of the cards, and we get from Raven's perspective, which was very interesting.
You get a dual point of view, POV, don't you? Maybe?
I'm okay, because I feel like we're kind of getting two POVs with the nightmare in her head.
True. That's true.
So, we'll see. So she's asking about the effects of the different cards, and he answers, and I have this quote specifically about the nightmare card because that's the one she's really interested in.
Yeah.
And he says, quote, "When I use the nightmare card too long, I don't see a creature, but I hear him. It's hard to explain. Most of the time, he doesn't say anything, but when he does, it's like he knows everything I've ever thought, ever feared. He taunts me, telling me I'm going to fail, that my efforts are meaningless. But it's just a voice, not a creature at all." And then Elspeth goes on to say, like, well, how do you know that? Or something like that. She, like, asks a clarifying question. And he says, quote, "Because when he speaks, relaying my worst fears over and over in my mind, it's not a stranger's voice, it's mine." And I was like, ugh, just stab me in the heart, why don't you? But it's so interesting because, like, as a reader, that was really interesting to hear, like I expected it to be the nightmare voice. Yeah. So I guess I'm even more curious at this point, like, why did she absorb the nightmare? Like, why did he choose her? What did it have something to do with her infection and her magic? Or was it just, like, because, like, other people have touched the card before. Is she, like, the first infected person to touch the card? But, like, Raven has a nightmare card. So, like, he was infected and was touching a nightmare card. So, like, I don't know. It's just very, like, I want to know more about why this point in time, why not Raven. Very interested to learn.
Yeah. And they did have a different nightmare card. So that was my first thought. Is maybe, like, could there be more nightmares? Like, this conversation brought a lot more questions, but also, like, clarifying a lot of things. Like, okay, so Elsbeth is going through something very unique that we know of, and we can assume that. But it's just interesting because, like, he's like, it's not a stranger's voice, it's mine. And I can imagine Elspeth being like, dang it. Like, I was hoping it was, like, a shared experience just using the nightmare card. But I think that was probably, like, for her, like, okay, what's going on with me? Because now she got, like, confirmation.
I think what's interesting is, like, Elspeth never used the nightmare card. She just touched it and absorbed the Shepherd King, right?
Yeah.
But the Shepherd King gave his soul to create the two nightmare cards.
Yeah.
So, like, theoretically, it shouldn't matter which nightmare card because he gave his soul. So, like, theoretically, is it swap? Like, okay, what if there's one part of his soul in one card and another part of his soul in the other card, and part of what Elspeth needs to do is connect the two souls, and maybe she just got the dark part of the soul.
Interesting.
But that just came out of my butt, ladies and gentlemen. I have no backing for that.
I wish you had read... Never mind. I'm not even gonna say anything. Anyways, you need to finish Harry Potter. That's all.
Yeah, because, like, Tom Riddle has all his soul into different Horcruxes.
Okay, you do know. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very Horcruxy. All right, so they found out where the Iron Gate card is. They confirmed it's with Sylvia's husband.
Mm-hmm.
And now they get to steal it. So, who we had... Do you want me to go over who we had, or do you want to go over it?
You can go over it.
Squad. I don't know.
Squad goals, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, they are. We had a group of, like, funny guys, silly gooses, you know. So we have Elspeth, Raven, Jesper, Elm, and then the Ivy brothers, and then Wick and Peter. So...
Wick and Peter are the Ivy brothers.
Oh, my bad. I was like, that was a lot more than I thought they... Thank you. So, I'm not good with remembering names. We've gone through this. I'm horrible with names.
So, I just want to say, I love that how Raven spells names. Like, Peter is Petyr. Like, I just think that's so fun. Jesper is the YR. I don't know. They're just fun.
It's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're getting ready to go be highwaymen, and grab the the Iron Gate card.
Mm-hmm.
And so Elspeth needs to change. She's in a dress, which I, like, completely didn't realize that she's been in a dress the whole time. Mm-hmm. Like, that was not something that occurred to me. And she's given these leggings and this outfit to wear. And she's like, I'm gonna look like a boy, or, like, I don't know. She's just like, it's gonna show, like, she's uncomfortable because it's not what she's normally wearing. And the nightmare...
They're very, like, it's a very skin-tight outfit.
Yes.
And she's used to wearing, like, like, queenly type dresses, right?
Very
like
flowy.
Yes.
Yeah. So the nightmare is, like, by the trees. They're just leggings, Elspeth. How you look is, and perhaps always has been, utterly irrelevant. I died laughing when he's so sassy. Like,
he's so sassy.
I love it. Like, he is just like, literally, it doesn't matter what you look like. You're going to steal a card. Like, chill out.
Yep.
But it's a typical girl thing. Like, I would definitely be thinking, like, oh, how am I going to look? Even though it's not going to matter. It's going to be dark. You're wearing black. Like, it's not going to matter.
Well, I think what's funny in this situation, and I literally just thought about this, is, like, he's saying, like, how you look currently is, but perhaps always has been. Like, I didn't choose you for your looks, is what I'm, like, is, I don't know, something that, like, came from that for me. It was like, what book did we read? We've recently read a book that, like, I didn't choose you for your looks. I chose you because of, like, who you are inside. Maybe it wasn't for the podcast. I don't know. I've been devouring books recently.
Which is good.
Yes. But anyways, I think this is interesting because Elspeth is very particular about how other people look. And part of this is probably because she's our POV and we have to know who people, like, what people look like. But she makes a very big deal of what other people look like. Like, think about how she describes, like, Ione. Like, that's a very, like, big deal to her that she has changed her looks. So, yeah. I don't know. Very interesting.
Yeah. I love it.
But
yeah,
everything goes wrong.
Everything.
She encounters her father and Hoth. Hoth breaks her wrist and she screams out so he knows it's a girl. The Destriers showing up, which is obviously bad. I have Jesper almost getting eaten by the mist. I don't know why I wrote that like that. But this is really important because remember, we learned earlier that Raven and Elspeth don't need a charm in the mist,
Mm-hmm.
and Raven carries one for instances like this. And Elspeth did not because she was like, I don't need one. Why do I need one?
Yeah.
So this was very interesting.
That was our first time also seeing a first-hand account of what happens to someone in the mist.
Yes.
So that was like interesting. Lots of information. Because
Yeah.
they're kind of going crazy, kind of going mad.
Yep, exactly. But they do get the Iron Gate card, which is
Mm-hmm.
important. So they
I would hope
accomplish their
so.
mission, even though everything went wrong. And then we get Raven asking about Elspeth's yellow eyes. He's like, sometimes I swear your eyes are yellow, and sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's just the light. Which makes sense because,
He's putting logic he doesn't understand.
well, no, like typically when the nightmare would show himself is when she's trying to get away from him or like in very like intense situations. So it makes sense that he's like, I think your eyes are yellow, but I'm not 100% sure because I can't, you know,
Mm.
like that's not my primary focus is figuring out if your eyes are yellow or not.
Yeah, that's true. Because her eyes are yellow because she did use the nightmare to get away from Hoth and go to safety.
Exactly.
So Elspeth, after they're like headed back, she's asking if what happens if they reunite the cards, asking if the spirit of the wood would disappear, if the mist will disappear, if like everything will just go back to normal and there'd be no danger or whatnot. And Raven had a great answer. I don't remember what that was, but oh, this is me doing the outline thinking we're doing it in a few days.
The next day.
Yeah. I can find it real quick.
It's okay.
But I know he said something about I think like the mist will lift and infection will go, but the spirit of the wood will still be there, I think is what they said. If I'm wrong, please yell at me. That's fine. My bad.
We're inviting a lot of criticism on ourselves here.
That's okay. Hey, we're here for conversations with you guys. So
that's true.
So what do you think will happen? What do you personally think will happen if they reunite the cards? Because I guess they don't really know.
Yeah, they don't know. I think so. I think the cards have more to do with the Shepherd King than they do with the Spirit of the Wood. So I think putting them all together because he gave pieces of himself to make each card, I think that will be more important. I mean, the Book of the Alders says the mist will lift, but I don't know if that's necessarily correct. I also don't know if, like, he's a reliable narrator. So, I don't know. I'm thinking it has more to do with the Shepherd King than it does with the mist and the Spirit of the Wood, but we'll see.
Okay. Cool. I was just curious. That's one of your questions. We're sprinkling them in this time.
I love it. Okay, so they're walking back, and Elspeth falls asleep on Raven's back while they're horseback riding. Adorbs.
I can't. I love that little... I don't know if you could call it a trope, but I love that.
The one horse trope. It's like the one bed trope.
Yes.
And then I have, quote, pretending again, and I do not remember why they were pretending. Do they kiss at this point? I don't think they do yet.
They haven't. No, he's like, I think he's or she's enjoying, like one of them is enjoying and feeling very comfortable with this. And realizing they're having like something else, like it's beyond just pretending.
Yeah, I don't remember. Anyways, so they get back and Elspeth sleeps in and then wakes up and Ione visits. And we get this quote
Scary.
from the Nightmare that I just loved. It's, quote, "A pinch of beauty, a whit of wit, and just a touch of unabashed cold-heartedness." And that's like starting to describe Ione completely. So I don't know, that was interesting. I also thought it was very interesting that Ione completely hates Prince Hoth. Especially when, like, before she had been the one to think that, like, she could change him and, like, he had the potential to change the kingdom. Like, I'm very curious what's happening behind closed doors to make her hate him this much. If it's, like, Hoth is actually as bad as we think he is, or is it the maiden card that's making her cold-hearted and, like, not able to, like, see the best in him? I don't know exactly, but I, like, very interesting. And then the Destriers are there training too, which is a big thing, which is why Ione is there to see Prince Hoth. And Prince Hoth is just like the worst. And so Hoth, the reason they're training is because Hoth is like all nervous because a band of highwaymen attacked them and did a bunch of damage to the Destriers or whatever. And
Hoth is pissed.
He's pissed. But it's of note that Hoth doesn't say it was a girl who bested him, which I think is important. Also, we get Hoth and Raven go at it, and Raven takes revenge, capital R, revenge, and stomps on his foot. And then we get, quote, "It wasn't about you when I broke his hand. I mean, it was about you, but it's more than that." And I'm curious what "it's more than that" meant.
Yeah, because we got a lot of hints in this part. Like, there's something deeper to Elm and Raven's dislike and distrust of Hoth and the king and everyone. So,
yep,
definitely they're sprinkling in some things, but not giving us answers that we want.
Yep.
Well, that you want.
Yes, exactly. And then straight up Elm just doesn't trust Elspeth, and I think that's hilarious. I don't know. Elm is just like, he's like, "Hey, Mitch." I don't know. He's just like, I like when he's on the page, but I don't care when he's not on the, like, I don't know. It's just like hilarious. But he doesn't trust Elspeth, which is a big deal. And then do you
think that will come back?
That he doesn't trust Elspeth?
Yeah, do you think he's gonna be right, yeah. Or...
I'm sure.
Okay.
I mean, I would be shocked if it doesn't, because she's still keeping a secret. It's all gonna blow up in somebody's face. Might as well be hers, since she's our point of view. So, the next part is they go to the garden again. And then Raven shows Elspeth the stone where the cards are held. That's right, we did not get that in the first trip to the garden, to the one dark window. Okay. We got it to the second one. And this is where they kiss.
Yes!
For the first time.
Finally! Sorry.
Yes. And then Elspeth runs away.
Can we talk about how many times she runs away? Anytime. She's like, "I'm a runner, I'm a track star." Like, out of here. Anytime she's uncomfortable.
At least number 5.
At least.
Probably closer to like 7 or 8.
And she does it later when they spend the night together. It's less running. True. But it's still, she leaves.
Oh, man. She's a mess. Hilarious. Anyways.
We'll get there.
We get this confirmation that the shepherd is the nightmare is the shepherd king. I was
night
right.
shepherd king. So proud of you. That was so hard to keep. I figured you were going to pick that up pretty quickly, but...
And then we also get the next morning with Philip, and I don't remember totally what happens the next morning, other than we get a download of some information that I do not remember because it's been a month. So.
Well, I think it was about, more about the Shepherd King in the background. Talking about, like... Because now she's come to this realization that, okay, the nightmare is the Shepherd King. So she's asking Philip about what he knows about the Shepherd King and, like, kind of the background.
I don't think she knows. Oh, no, she does. Never mind. You're right.
Yeah. Because we would know without her knowing.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And then Elspeth figures out the bond every time she asks for his help. She grows weaker and he grows stronger.
Yes. What do
And
we
more
think
present.
about that? Like,
I mean,
that's her deterioration. And
okay.
he's been
So
hinting
let's
at
talk
that.
about deterioration for a second.
Okay.
Because I don't think that's what's happening here.
Interesting.
So there's a difference. Deterioration is talked about in terms of the infection. It's not talked about in terms of the cards.
Okay.
So when you are deteriorating when you have the infection, either your body goes or your mind goes, and they're literally deteriorating. And Emery is a really good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
He's literally deteriorating. I think Orith is a really good example of that. He is slowly like getting older, and Elspeth mentions that. But there's a difference between deteriorating because you have the infection and using the cards, and the cards like paying the price to use that magic. And I think those are two very different things.
Right.
So like I don't think Ione using the maiden card to make herself beautiful, I don't think her being cold-hearted is a deterioration. I think that's a price that she's paying to use the magic. And I think those are two very different things.
Okay.
So, in this instance, I think Elspeth using the Shepherd King's power is more linked to the price she's paying to use the magic rather than a deterioration of her being infected. And I think those are two different things.
Okay, I like it.
Even though she says she's deteriorating and she tells Raven she's deteriorating, I think she's just using that as an excuse.
Okay.
To not tell him what's actually happening.
She definitely doesn't want him to know.
No. And I don't know why. He's started to be really honest with her. So,
Yeah.
like, girl, you don't have a right to be mad at him anymore. Just be honest.
And did you pick up he dropped this hint a lot throughout she just came to the conclusion that every time she asks for his help, he grows stronger. Like, she doesn't know where that line is now between him and her, and he's been dropping this the entire book. Were you able to pick that up? Like, did you guess this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, girl, I've been telling you this whole time, and she's just like not picking up on it. And I don't know. I picked up on it, but I don't know. I feel like we got that like actual confirmation.
Yeah, it was kind of like something in the background that wasn't too important to the story as of yet, but it was like, if you were amazingly great at catching everything that the Nightmare's saying, like, good for you, but like, yeah, we got actual confirmation, which was cool.
Yeah. So the next day they go to Market Day.
Market Day!
And we get Ione protecting Elspeth because Hoth grabs her wrist and is like,
how did you hurt this?
And she's like, we went horseback riding and she fell off a horse. Which, like, first of all, Elspeth told Ione that she fell off a horse. Why is Ione stepping in and not just saying, oh, Elspeth fell off a horse, which is accurate, and saying, no, her and I, like, we're adding to this lie that, like why? Ione's smart, and I appreciate that. But, like, I don't know. I feel like her falling off a horse, at least there were witnesses of Elspeth falling off a horse. Raven was there. The Ilk brothers, or whatever they're called. I think Ivy brothers were there. Like, there's witnesses. Like, even, like, Elm was there. Like, there's witnesses to her specifically falling off a horse. There's not witnesses to her and Ione riding horses and Elspeth falling off. So, yeah. I didn't love that.
Yeah. Market Day was stressful.
It was.
Because it was, like, this, like, supposedly fun event, and like Elspeth is like, let's go steal my dad's card, and Elm's like, no. Uh, like we cannot. We have to show face, and she's just like being silly and trying to like get it done. And you have like she's seeing her dad, and she looks like her mom, and she's seeing her stepmom and her stepsisters again, and it's just there's so much going on in this scene that like you could feel it building to something, but I wasn't expecting like what it built to,
Okay, interesting.
which we'll talk about.
So, Raven's admission, this has to be your
Is it mine?
your
I
note.
don't think so.
Is it my note?
Yeah, I like you had I think most of the last parts are your notes because I was like, oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say anyway.
Interesting. Okay. So Raven admits. What
Do
does
you
he
remember?
admit?
I don't know. That's
It's
okay.
something. It's like he admits that he like really likes Elspeth and like
Yeah.
that he's like been thinking about her since they met or whatever. Like the romantic admission. Um, and I said insert flushed emoji here, which means there had to have been some kind of like
Cute thing.
right. Like I obviously again, this was a month ago. But
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks for dealing with us, listeners.
and then we get this big like Hoth is banishing the parents and the child into the mist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we learn a couple different things in this scene, right? So what happens and what we learn are a little bit different. So what happens is Hoth banishes the parent and the child. Elm comes up and chooses to publicly disobey his brother and compete with the different scythe cards. I said that right for the first time on the first time. For the first
I'm
time.
so proud of you.
And then Elm, in general in this scene, like we get a lot of information dropped from Elm when just her, Elspeth and Elm are kind of walking together. He's very informational, very formal. He chose the correct side, which I loved. And then we also learned that when this happens, Raven has a underground railroad type situation for the children and the parents to like come out and like not actually die, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then the nightmare almost kills Lyndon.
One of those guys.
One of the guys.
It was a Destrier, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's one of the. I think it was the Destrier that is like second in command to, or like really
Hoth.
close to Hoth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So very close to Hoth.
Yep. And then at the end of this, we have Emery's second great escape.
I love that you titled it that. That was clever. I laughed.
Thank you. So Emery gets out of the castle. I loved seeing Emery lucid. That was super fun. It was a good change. I loved this because I think we needed to see him lucid to get some information, and then that like only he would be able to give us in a way that was like not, hey, here's just a huge info dump, right? So like we learned that the Shepherd King was a ewe. Like that's a big deal. And that's not something that's been confirmed yet, I guess. Like I think information from Emery is, because so far everything he said has been accurate. So I think everything that Emery comes out and says, like, about the Shepherd King or about, like, people tends to be accurate. So I feel like we can assume that this is correct. But we haven't gotten official confirmation of it yet, which I think is kind of interesting.
And I think him being lucid really, like, brought, like, an emotional connection to us with Emery. Like, before we just cared about Emery because Raven cared about Emery.
Yeah.
But now we got to, like, see what a good, like, good guy he was. I forget how old he is, but he, like, we got that personal connection to see why we're fighting so hard to lift the mist beyond just, like, what happened at Market Day where all these kids and these parents are dying because they think the infection is bad. and they're just punishing people for no reason. So
exactly,
we got that like second emotional level with Emery, which was really, really good. Well done, Rachel.
100%. So we get Elm not trusting Elspeth again. Consistent theme. I'll give Elm one thing. He's consistent.
He is consistent.
And then Elspeth reveals that she's degenerating, and this is a big deal because this leads to their night together. And Keri, this was not YA. This is definitely not YA. I read this, so for our readers, for our listeners, we do our best to stay away from spicy things. I don't know, it's something that we talked about early in the podcast. We want this to be something that you feel comfortable listening to with
around your kids, family,
around your mom, around your dad, anybody,
anyone.
Right? And this is really important to us that like that's what we can be for you. Like we don't want you to have to not listen to us because you're around certain people. So that's typically why we lean towards YA more than not, because they're a little safer. But I do want to highlight this a little bit. But this is not YA. It's definitely more new adult, but it's not super graphic. There were a lot of like metaphors in this scene that was like, it wasn't like super graphic, which I really appreciated. And the other thing, too, that I appreciated about this is nothing really happened during this scene that I felt like was important to the story. But nothing really happens in this scene, and it happens at the end of a chapter. So if you get to this scene and you get uncomfortable, you can just skip to the next chapter and it's over, and it's not like you're missing out on anything compared to, like, there are some books that like you almost have to read scenes that you're uncomfortable with because like you're gonna miss something that's happening and you may not understand something that happens later because you missed something that like was a conversation in a really graphic scene that makes you uncomfortable.
Exactly.
So all of that to say is if you want to skip it, you can just go to the next chapter and it's
I certainly did. I was reading it on a plane, so we skipped that.
Nice. But anyways, I wanted to throw this in here because it is not YA. It is not closed door. But if you're uncomfortable with it, you can just skip to the next chapter and like you're good.
Yeah. I think it's I wish it was closed door though.
Yeah. Anyways. The next morning, running. I don't know why I said running at breakfast, but the next morning, we're at breakfast. Elspeth is at breakfast, and Raven walks in, and he is smiling and laughing, and everybody is watching him like he has gone crazy. Hilarious. I was laughing so hard during this scene.
I love him. Like that, this scene made me fall in love with Raven.
Really?
Yes.
Just because of how happy he was?
Yeah, he was. We got to see like a unstressed Raven, de-stressed Raven. Like he got to be like himself a little bit without like all the responsibilities and weight of the world holding him.
Yeah, so that's true. That. And then they go for a walk with Emery after breakfast, and then they come back, and Elspeth goes and asks Emery if he can do her thing, or he can do his thing, and like look at her. And Emery sees that the nightmare is becoming part of her. The monster is literally her combined with the Shepherd King. And there's an interesting, like, I think in the book, like, there's the girl and the monster, the girl and the king and the monster they become, or something like that. Like, it's like a combined thing. Is this your quote or is it mine?
It's yours.
Okay. So the excerpt from the beginning of chapter 20 has this quote, and I think it relates really importantly to kind of what's happening with Elspeth and the Nightmare King. And it says, quote, "Magic is the oldest paradox. The more power it gives you, the weaker you become. Be wary, be clever, be good. Magic is the oldest paradox." So, I don't know. That just, I feel like, is very, like...
It's a good way to, like, wrap up what happened in these sets of chapters too.
Yeah.
We got so much magic.
Yeah. So that's the end of part 2.
We should end our podcast with be wary, be clever, be good.
Ooh.
For the rest of this.
For the rest of these, I like it. I like
that'd
it.
That'd be cute. Because they say that all the time in this part, too.
They do.
All right, so we are now with our Tomes and Tonics / Meet Cute section. So this is where we get to pick the drinks we think the characters in our Meet Cute section would drink. So we are going to do Jesper, Hoth, and Eric Spindle. And you're like, Keri, why Eric? Why her dad? Why not Elm? Great question. I have my reasons. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all. I will not be getting into those until later.
Smart.
All right, so our first one, Jesper. So Jesper, she's our girl, feminist queen, the only female destrier. So she is the One Dark Window version of getting women to work wherever the heck they want, because everyone's like, why would this woman want to work as a destrier? Great question. Because she could do whatever she wants.
That's right.
Automatically we fell in love with Jesper. The second we found out she was the only destrier who was a woman. So she's different. I love her scene of like, I can't deal with Sylvia and her daughters without some alcohol. Like, and her mom's like, please stop.
Yeah.
So she reminds me of one of my friends. So I love it. So Jesper is Raven and Emery's sister. She's the middle child. So Emery is younger and Raven is the oldest. She's a modern lady, so she dresses for her job, so no dresses. And she's just overall goals. And so I'm interested to see. I wrote my tonic and I said explain. I have no idea what that's going to be. But so with her being overall goals, and we've talked about nicknames throughout this book. So her nickname is Jess, which makes sense. Jesper, Jess. So now her tonic. Iced caramel macchiato is what I said, and I don't know why.
Okay.
I think it was because of the layers. Like, probably she's got like multiple layers to her.
Okay.
Or because it's the first drink that she got and she never wanted to move from it.
Okay.
I don't know. Who knows why I said that? Do you have any thoughts for Jesper?
I think she's just an espresso shop. Straight up. Knocks it back.
That's a good one.
That's it.
I love it. All right. So we have Hoth. Hoth is the heir to Blunder. So he's the king's firstborn son. He's Raven's cousin and Elm's older brother. So he is known as a brute. And we learned in part 1 that he is engaged to Ione Hawthorne, who is Elspeth's cousin. So we've got lots of cousins. We're getting all mixed up with the families here. It's a lot. So that's why we had to outline. We have Raven's cousin, Elm's his older brother, or Elm's the younger brother of Hoth. It's a lot. It's okay.
Yep.
But I think technically he is a destrier. I couldn't find... I think he's just he's just the prince.
Yeah, he's just the prince.
But we don't like him. He's kind of the worst.
He is the worst.
He is. Because he hates the infection more than most people in the town that I forgot is what it's called. But he hates...
In Blunder?
Thank you. So he hates the infection more than anyone else, really. And he's the one who told the king about both Raven and Emery's infection. So... big yikes, bad. So, I think he would drink a sparkling water because, just plain, not even flavored, just plain, because he's horrible. And I think sparkling water, plain, is disgusting.
Interesting.
So, I thought he'd be boring and plain.
Interesting.
Gross. What's your thought for Hoth?
I want to say, black tea with lemon.
Okay.
But I don't know why. That's just my gut is black tea with lemon, and that's all
go with your
wants. Gut. But not like black tea, you have to like stew properly. His is never done correctly. It's always too bitter. So we're gonna do bitter black tea with lemon.
I love it.
As my computer shakes as I'm typing these in the moment.
You're good. All right, so our last one is Eric Spindle. So Eric is Elspeth's dad. He's the former captain of the Destriers. He lost his wife Iris to the infection and has protected Elspeth from being found out for 11 years. He currently holds the Well card.
Yes.
So, he's a loving father, so I like him currently. Obviously, we're not going to hold his actions against him because he thought highwaymen were attacking him. So, that's okay. He was trying to attack his own daughter, but whatever. He didn't know.
But he wasn't. He didn't know. You can't hold that against him.
Exactly. So, we're giving him a pass here. So, for my tonic, I said hot coffee with a little bit of sweet cream creamer.
Okay. I said a lavender iced coffee.
Ooh. Why?
Because I think he's like, he needs the iced coffee. I think he's an iced coffee person because he can't wait for the hot coffee to like cool down to be able to drink. And then I think lavender because he like, I don't know, like with Iris, like there's always irises around the house and like, I don't know, I think he just like likes the little bit of the floral note.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But that's it for Tomes and Tonics.
All right. So for magical moments, we've said like 10 times. I made this a month ago, so we're just gonna explore, see where we go.
See where we go.
See where we end up. Okay, so last time I said I was going to talk about the infection, like the actual infection. And we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, like the infection and like degeneration versus like using the magic cards. But I don't think we actually learned a lot about it in this section. So I'm still unsure how people get infected. Still don't know. But we do find out more about how infected people are treated. So basically, if you're found out to be infected, you are taken to the king, and if you're found to be useful, you're promoted in instances of Orith with the infected and Raven with the card immunity, etc. If you're not useful, you are removed from the situation, and infected people have some kind of degeneration, but it's different for each, and like we see Raven versus Emery, right? But all infected people have it. So now on to the cards. So last episode we talked about how the cards were made and how many of each were made, etc. Today we're going to talk about the cards' magic and then the degeneration they supply. And I know I talked about degeneration. I think we're just going to call it the consequences they supply at this point. Okay. The payment that they require.
Perfect.
So I'm going to go over 6 of them today and then 6 of them in the next episode and focus on the ones we saw most in the book so far today. So obviously, the nightmare is the most common that we talk about. There were 2 cards made. Using the nightmare, or users of the nightmare can speak into each other's minds. So like Raven can speak into I don't know, Jesper, like their band of misfits or whatever.
Yeah, like he used it when they were stealing the Iron Gate. So he would let them know, hey, there's danger ahead, like, or whatever he needs to tell them.
Exactly. Yep. The consequence is that it reveals one's deepest fears the more they use it. So see the voice in Raven's head, which we talked about already. Next is the Black Horse. There were 12 Black Horse cards made. The power that they give is intense speed and agility. They become basically a master of combat, which we see with all the Destriers. The consequence is the user becomes weak without it. So the more they use it, the weaker they become. Very similar to the more Elspeth uses the nightmare power, the weaker she becomes herself. The Scythe. So there were 4 Scythe cards made. Using a scythe card means you can control others. The consequence is that it causes physical pain. So see Elm's bloody nose when he was going head to head against the Iron Gate, which was a big deal. They stole the Iron Gate. That was like a whole 2-3 chapters of this part.
Was
5 Iron Gate cards were made. They bring peace to the user, which we have not seen an example yet. I'm very interested to see how that goes. I think it basically means, like, no matter what's going on in their life, like, they feel at peace. Like, they just don't get stressed, which, like,
goals.
Amazing, right?
I want the Iron Gate card.
The payment, though, is that it steals years from your life, so
does stress, right?
Yep. So you may have a short life, but it'll be peaceful. The next is the mirror card. There were 3 cards made. It gives the user invisibility. The consequence is that the longer they use the cards, they can see spirits / other dimensions and or worlds. So I'm very interested to see, there's this big, like, you know, like the Massverse, like Sarah J. Maas's, all of her different series, like, go into a universe. Brandon Sanderson has his universe that all of his different series like go into. I'm wondering if this will be something Rachel Gillig does and uses like the mirror card in the future. I know that this is only a duology, but she is writing another book right now, so we'll see. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Who knows? And then lastly, we have the Maiden card. There were 8 Maiden cards made. It gives the user beauty, but the consequence is that the user becomes cold-hearted. See Ione. Other magical things we learned. The nightmare is the Shepherd King. The room with 1 window is where the Shepherd King and the Spirit of the Wood would barter. We see the stones and where the cards were held. Only infected blood can open it, so they have to like cut their hand, and that's how they can open the portal. The Spirit of the Wood mist doesn't affect the infected, which is a protection. And then magic is like salt, and I felt like this was shoved down our throats. This part was like, there's so much salt in the air. Like, I felt like every chapter it popped up at least 2 or 3 times, like, I don't taste salt, or I do taste salt, or the air tastes extra salty, and I was like, okay, we get it, magic tastes like salt. So that was another magical thing we learned. But yeah, that's our magical moments. Stay tuned for next episode where we go through the rest of the 6 cards.
I love it. I'm excited. So I only have one question before we finish up here. Do you have any predictions for part 3? Like, do you have any theories, any thoughts? I know it's been a while, so you might have to... But do you have any, like, gut feelings? Or what? It's okay if you don't.
So I feel like it's going to end on a big cliffhanger.
Okay.
I feel like possibly the cliffhanger is that Raven learns about the nightmare or the Shepherd King in her head. But I also don't think that that's going to happen this early in the series. I feel like that's probably something that happens later in the series. So, like, maybe part 1 or 2 of the next book.
Okay.
I'm interested to see what happens with Ione and Hoth.
Okay.
As I said before, I don't think Ione is going to be queen because there was something early that said she's never going to be queen. So we're sticking to that because the Nightmare apparently knows everything. And I know he's the Shepherd King, but I keep saying Nightmare, so...
Yeah, it's okay. We'll use those terms interchangeably probably throughout the series.
Yeah. But honestly, that's kind of all I can think of right now because it's been a while. So
yeah, no, that's good.
I'm sorry to our listeners that, like, we have said that so many times during this episode, but we really just, like we said at the beginning, like, we had a lot going on and we had this episode done and then, you know, life happened and that's okay. But we're back. We're going to continue on and we'll get back into our rhythm.
Yes, for sure.
But thank you so much for listening to us today. If you liked today's episode, please rate and review us wherever you listen and give us 5 stars. And the best thing you can do is share us with your friends. So if you have friends reading through One Dark Window, let them know about us.
Yeah. And while you're letting them know about us, make sure you and your friends go follow us on Instagram and TikTok. It's at Tomes and Tropes Pod. Or if you have thoughts about this episode or this book, email us or DM us at tomesandtropespod@gmail.com. We'd love to love to hear your thoughts about One Dark Window so far, and we'll see you next week when we finish One Dark Window. Are you
Be
gonna do
wary.
it?
Hold on. Be wary, be clever, be good.
Yeah.
That's
Bye.
it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing. Bye.